YouTube is live.
Very good.
Just waiting for Steve. I think I saw an email said he's going to join us.
Anne Marie, by the way, during my report, I'm going to introduce you. If you would like to, because I know most of the board members have met you at this point, but there are a couple that haven't, and just for the public's knowledge.
I'll put it
Oh, there you go. But if you would like to say a couple words during that, just to say hi and make sure everybody knows who you are and all that sort of stuff, that would be the time. Bart's gonna feel left out now that he's not in the room.
Yeah, I had to talk him into going home. He's got about a 40-minute drive.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, you were the workhorse in putting this together.
Yeah,
Just
definitely.
head home, and he'll be on Zoom.
Yeah.
Probably get my computer.
5, 6, no, 6. Who's missing? Linda Grappo's here. Steve Sedlak's not out.
Steve did say he might not be able to attend due to health reasons.
Okay.
Todd, it does look like the only person we're waiting on at this point is Steve Sedlak. Given a recent email from him, I'm not sure if he'll be able to attend today. Would you like me to give him a quick call?
Either that or we could start. And if he joins, because I did see he's not feeling well, so maybe he's taking a turn.
Yep. Okay.
I'd like to call the regular meeting for the Board of Selectmen for Tuesday, January 18, 2022 to order. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that former Mayor John Forrest passed away this past weekend. He served on the board from 1993 until I believe 2003, serving as mayor from 2001 to 2003. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Pledge allegiance to the flag which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
We gave it a go.
Agenda review, is there anything?
Want to do a call to order?
Have the
Candace.
call to order, Candace?
Candace Bouchard.
Jonathan Morehart?
Candy Perez.
Josh Kelly.
Todd Arshalashi?
Gotta remember where I am in the order.
Linda Grappo.
By the way,
Jack
try to
Bork.
keep it muted at all times. If you need to, just nudge me or something if I'm not.
Now we're moving on to the agenda review. Does anyone have anything?
No.
Jonathan?
Yes. On the, I mentioned 2 meetings previous, I had been absent and I forgot to abstain on the last vote.
Okay, we'll do that in the minutes, the next item.
Oh.
All right, can I, the approval of minutes for the regular meeting on January 3rd. Jonathan, you had a correction.
Indeed, I was not present meetings before, and I forgot to abstain last meeting, and I would just like to put that in place now.
Is this a Republican thing?
No, it's not. First of all, you need to have a mask on if you're in town
Okay.
hall, and second, there's no meeting of the Republican Town Committee.
Anything
tonight.
else?
Oh, darn, okay.
I'll make a motion to
Thank you.
approve with the modification.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? All right. 601, Jack is abstaining. Minutes approved. Citizen comments?
I think it would be 501.
Yes, 501, I'm sorry. Steve is still not here. Citizens' comments, the Board of Selectmen welcomes public comments. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes or less and may speak only once. Please call in 860-738-6958. If you wish to speak, 860-738-6958.
No, they gave out the link to the meeting. They could get on the Zoom. Some of it was comical, because we had one lady who was like, I don't know what the heck she was doing. She faded in and out, and then she'd come back, and then she'd come on.
All right, as there's no calls so far, we'll move on to the town manager's report.
Before we do that, regarding these citizen comments, I was just asked, if a person was going to join us online, as we are right now, as a Zoom, they could do that and then also make comments there too. Is that correct?
That is not correct at this time, Jack. At this time, the access to the Zoom call itself has been limited to members of the board and invited members of staff. So we do ask that anybody who wants to make a citizen's comment call in at 860-738-6958. That would be the way to make the call. If somebody needs an accommodation, and doesn't have a phone number, then certainly they could reach me at townmanager@townofwinchester.org to try and troubleshoot that. But those are the options available at this meeting.
Okay, so at this point, we're saying that the Zoom meeting itself is not open, other than watching it on the YouTube channel and the channel 194 and cable.
That is correct. For the town manager's report, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First and foremost, I would like to take a moment and introduce to all of you our new Director of Finance. And I was hoping very much that this would be something that we could all do in person together, but I am very glad that we have the opportunity to do it at all. So this is Anne Marie Rowe. She is joining us, previously working for the town of Plymouth, and I invited her to, of course, say a few words at this time, in case you don't like to hear from her.
Are you muted? Welcome, thank you, Josh. I feel like I'm at a baseball game. The echo. Obviously, just want to introduce myself. I think I've met just about everyone. I think Glenn is the only, oh no, Glenn, I've spoken to you. So I have met everyone. And I just look forward to working with everyone in the town of Winchester, and thank Bruce for his support that he's given me so far, and hope to continue his progress for the town of Winchester. Now I'll put my mask back on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anne Marie. And sorry, folks, bear with us tonight. We do have a couple of computers going here in Town Hall so that we can give our presentation as smoothly as possible to you. That will come a little bit later. But for now, a few other updates from me. First and foremost, as a lot of you know because you were there in person or because you watched remotely, we did this past Friday have a very well attended and a very well viewed press conference, and that highlighted 6 different economic development related items that we've taken on. We did successfully on Friday submit 2 different applications to the Communities Challenge Grant Program that the state of Connecticut's offered, and that's really thanks to the hard work of staff. That includes Bruce, that includes Anne Marie, Jim, and Bart here on the call, all of whom put in countless hours, tireless effort, and we would not have come anywhere close to getting it done if it hadn't been for every single one of them. So I really appreciated all of you, and that represents just over $8.3 million worth of grant requests that we made to the state. Of course, as with any competitive grant, there are a lot of odds to be considered in all of it, but I'm optimistic. I think that we put together very robust packages, and I'm hopeful that the state will look favorably on all of it. Beyond that, that was kind of highlight number 1. And highlight number 2 is related to COVID-19. So hospitalizations, unfortunately, around the state continue to be high. Over the last few days, since I even wrote this report, we've seen a very small downward trend in those hospitalizations. When I wrote my report that you all have in hand, we had a positivity rate of about 21.25. Now it's down under 20%, and actually we've seen numbers be under 20% for a total of 3 days. So I am pleased to say that after consultation with the Director of Emergency Management, Steve Williams, we will be reopening town facilities to a full level on Thursday. That's something that I'll be working with staff to put together tomorrow. So on Thursday morning, we will reopen without the need for an appointment. And for those of you who hadn't heard, we had, while this spike had been as high as it was, we had moved to a system where we required appointments to be made in order to enter town hall, and at this time we'll move away from that. Another thing I should have highlighted before with the Communities Challenge Grant, of course, the primary reason for the press conference. We have announced the release of about $250,000 for 2 different investment programs. Now, one of those is a $150,000 facade improvement program. The other one is a $100,000 business startup program. If you haven't heard, if you're somebody who's watching online tonight and you haven't heard about these programs, and you own a business or you want to start a business here in town or even move your business here to town, we really encourage you to take advantage of these programs. You can find more information on the town's website under the Town Managers page or the Economic Development Commission's page. You can find a tab that says Facade Improvement Grant and Business Startup Program, I should say, not grant, but program. That page contains all kinds of information about how you can apply for these forgivable loan programs, about who qualifies for them, and I'm happy to say that we've already received our first application for both of those programs. So people have heard, this is really humming along, and I think it's all very positive. Last week, we were able to hold a COVID test kit distribution event. It was very well attended, but we do actually have leftover test kits. So we have test kits that have been distributed to a number of our different agencies, including, but not limited to, the fire, police, ambulance service, and public works offices. That's to help keep our first responders and our really essential workers healthy and making sure that they're able to come into work safely. The senior center is still distributing test kits that we were able to distribute to them. That's for individuals age 55 and older. We have a number of other agencies in town that are distributing test kits to their clientele in particular. And here at Town Hall, after our drive-through distribution, a lot of towns had instances where they ran out of tests, and there were a lot of folks who were left wanting for test kits. That's not the case here. We have a number left over. If you're somebody who's desperately looking for a test kit, you really need it, you have symptoms or you've been exposed, please reach out to us. We can help you. Those supplies are limited, so please take that into consideration, but I do want the public to be aware that we do have extra test kits at this point in time, and they're far better used in your hands at this point than it is sitting on a shelf here. We want to make sure that people are staying healthy, that people who are sick are staying home or keeping other people safe, and that together we're working to eradicate the virus as much as we can out of Winchester. Beyond that, those are the key crucial updates that I have for town at this point in time. A little bit later tonight, we'll talk about one of the other huge projects that we've all been working on, which is regarding our roadways. But before we get to that, are there any questions that I can help answer for the board? Yes, Candace. Hey, Candace, you're muted.
Do you have any updates on the 4 lights around the YMCA?
Yes.
Would you like to speak to that?
Sure.
Jim to the rescue.
Hi, Candace. Yeah, we got a proposal from Onion Electric to put new guts on the inside of those lamps. Apparently there was a wiring issue as well. So the parts are on order, the plan has been developed, and they're gonna get right to it. And I think a grand total cost was somewhere around $4,500.
Thank you.
Any other questions I can answer for you, or Jim can answer for you? All right, seeing none, thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Josh. Did we lose Bruce?
He just walked in the door.
I see him
Yep.
behind you.
My internet just went out, so.
Would you like to come speak here? Bruce's internet went out on his phone, so he's going to come speak to you all on this computer here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to provide you with some information about the activity in the general fund through 6 months of the fiscal year. So we're at 50% of the fiscal year as of December 31st. First of all, property tax revenues are at 16.6 million, representing 68% of the budget, compared to 15.8 million last year, which was 65% of the budget. So collections are coming in very well, and I wish to thank all the taxpayers for their timely tax payments. Total revenues are at 19.9 million, representing 57% of the budget, compared to 18.8 million or 55% of the budget last year. We only received one municipal aid from this received from the state, was $16,000 from the Pequot Mohegan grant, which is part 1 of 3. It came in on time. Our total expenditures for the general fund through 6 months, or 50% of the year, are at $16.5 million, representing 47% of the budget. Last year, we were at $15.5 million, representing 45% of the budget. With respect to cash, at December 31st, the general fund had $14.5 million in cash. 9.8 million was invested. And significant capital improvements activity this month, primarily, besides a little bit of engineering activity and road maintenance. The major item this month was the Soldiers Monument Commission put down 50% deposit on their window project to lock in the price and assure that there wouldn't be delivery issues. The Hinsdale School Renovation Committee continues to meet. That project is still ongoing. Through December 31st, the committee have spent $6.6 million on that project, including $5.4 million to the contractor. And we continue to submit these costs to the Department of Administrative Services at the state of Connecticut for the reimbursement percentage as part of the contract. 2 other items I'd just like to highlight for the selectmen. That is the fiscal 21 annual consolidated financial report was filed with the Office of Policy and Management on December 30th, prior to the December 31st due date. And that document is now on the town website for everyone to read. Also included are the state and federal single audit reports for fiscal '21. The auditors, our auditors, King and Associates, are prepared to present their report to the selectmen on the first meeting in February. And the other item is that I sent out just a little while ago to you a draft budget calendar for fiscal '23 for you to review, so that that at the next meeting that can be adopted. So that's it for my report. This will probably be my last time reporting to you. It's been a pleasure to do that all these many years and months, and you'll get good reporting from Anne Marie, I'm sure, but I'm happy to address any questions. Yes, Candy?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. The first one is, do you anticipate the grand list being filed on January 31st on time?
Yes, I do anticipate that will happen. I think the assessor's office is getting very close to being able to compute that and reveal that to us.
Because as I talked with Josh about it, it's really important as we go forward to formulate the budget, because I'm pretty sure, with the budget, we all, want to make sure we stay in line with where we've been with a no increase if at all possible. And the grand list growth, I think, is what's going to, drive us to be able to, do some things. And then the second thing is, it's become another little, back and forth a little bit on the fund balance. And I was wondering if you could you or Anne Marie could quickly draft something about why it's important to keep the fund balance. As we've talked about numerous times, people are aware that we have, a high amount of savings, and I know that the auditors and everybody recommend 16%. And we know that it's, having that fund balance is important for, like an emergency or something. But we've talked about a lot about how it is helping us save a lot of money on financing. Like when we self-finance a big plow truck or a big payloader or something like that. Is there any way to calculate how much savings we had in financing for just a couple of pieces of equipment? And we also know that fund balance is used to help pay for things at Hinsdale or at a bridge or some other major project while we await the reimbursement from different entities. And we also know that fund balance too will carry payrolls, over the course of, between that December when we don't have a lot of, we have depleted, the taxes that we collected because you're spending, and before you get the next January installment, and then the same thing happens again in June. All of the reasons why it's important to keep that fund balance at 16%. I think that would be helpful for those of us that, see these comments and questions, and, we'll be able to have a quick little document that we, can say why it's important to keep it that way. Especially as we come into the budget season, especially as we come into, the infrastructure discussion. Thank you.
We can do that. Okay, well, thank you again.
Thank you, Bruce. Moving on to correspondence. The board did receive a letter in opposition to the cannabis
Bruce, if you get the chance to get back online, I think that we'll keep going as we were planning. Otherwise, we'll rearrange over here and we'll have all four of us
Yeah.
on one screen and we'll do what we can.
I think that if you can turn your speakers down,
Yeah.
and I thought my speakers off, then we won't get, that'll prevent the,
Todd, that would be really helpful. We're trying to iron out just a couple technical glitches here, so I apologize for not doing that at this moment, but if you would, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Sorry, you were
January
looking for me to
17th,
turn down?
Board of Selectmen, Town of Winchester. I am writing in
Your
opposition to
speakers.
the establishment of
Catching
regulations that
over
would
there.
permit the retail sale and production of recreational marijuana. Or to join municipalities that have rejected this disordered new form of economic development that threatens the health and safety of residents, children in particular. The pursuit of revenue isn't good enough reason to allow retail sales here, and the negative impact on the normalization of drugs that would occur far outweigh the benefits
Terrible
of
enough.
revenue the town
They need a
will see.
booster.
On that point, I'm skeptical not only about the financial reward for Winchester, but also whether our perpetual cash grab state will hold its end of the bargain when the money is tight. In my free time, I'm
Is this helpful,
fortunate enough
Bruce?
to work with children here as a volunteer.
Once we get on, probably yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Making marijuana more readily available in their community won't help them, nor will it help their parents who already face a multitude of scary and complex challenges as they raise their children. Look no further than New Haven, where 5 teenagers were hospitalized last week after consuming edibles containing THC. Educators in various communities over the last year have warned about such products turning up in schools.
You might need to
The
reboot.
State Department of Children and Families has issued a public service announcement style warning within the weeks of the General Assembly legalizing marijuana, and Attorney General William Tong has since issued similar warnings too. Keep in mind, our state's retail market isn't even up and running yet. For a community whose mayor and town manager rank tackling the opioid crisis as a top priority, rejecting the retail sale of marijuana here seems like common sense. Thank you for your time. Signed, Mr. Brian Sunday. Glenn, we can get you a copy of that for the minutes if you need it. Does anyone else have anything?
Get out of there and go back.
Boards and commissions? Linda, do you want to take
Go
that?
back into Charlie Canal.
Yeah, Steve asked that I take over if he didn't show up.
There.
So boards and commissions, we have, going into nomination, we have no new considerations. Going into nominations for the second time is Shane Deschamps. He's interested in the Board of, Recreation Board, for a permanent position, term to expire for 2028. This is the second step of the vetting process. Next meeting, he will be placed into appointment. So we'll move on to reappointments. We have 3 from the Recreation Board.
Better.
I'll need a motion to reappoint Alan Miller to the Recreation Board for a permanent position, his term to expire April 2028. Thank you, Candace. All in favor? Or Todd, it's your turn to say all in favor. Go ahead.
We have a second.
We have.
Jonathan? I'll second it. All in favor?
Oops. And
Okay, the second person for motion, for reappointment is Kurt Root. I'll need a motion to reappoint Kurt Root to the Recreation Board as a permanent member. His term to expire April 2028. Thank you, kids.
Candace has a second. All in favor? Unanimous?
And the last is a motion to reappoint Brian Shaughnessy to the Recreation Board as a permanent member, his term to expire April 2028. Do I need a motion? So moved.
Is there a second?
I don't know if I got the first, but I'll do the second.
Okay. All in favor? Unanimous?
No
right, well, hello again, everybody. We do have, aside from me, we have 4 other staff members that are joining us for this presentation this evening. That includes Jim Rollins off to my side here. That includes Bruce Stratford and Anne Marie Rowe, and that includes Bart Clark joining us as well. So just give me 1 second. I will pull up that presentation for the group.
Josh, what you're showing is the same as you've already sent us, correct? So,
That's correct. That is correct. Thanks to everybody who's tuning in. I do want to kick things off with this conversation by saying that this is really a continuation of what we were discussing at the December 20th, 2021 meeting. Now that was a presentation that was given where staff presented information about the current state of the town's infrastructure. And just to quickly recap that. So we described for the group, for everybody who was listening in and who came to the in-person meeting at that time, that since fiscal year 2016, about $8.7 million has been spent on pay-as-you-go roadway improvements, and with state and federal grants accounting for about 51% of those funds. Many roads, bridges, and sidewalks, catch basins, the things that make a comprehensive roadway, remain in poor condition, and more investments needed. And we're going to talk about that, obviously, over the course of today's presentation. And the Board of Selectmen, after that meeting, and as part of some of the commentary on that presentation, asked town staff to prepare a presentation on what a faster-paced, increased investment in infrastructure would look like. And that's why we're here today. So just wanted to provide that brief exposition for you. And just to summarize, here is the difference that we saw between the 2016 pavement assessment program, I should say the results that we had at that time, and 2019. After a few years of investment, not all the way up to the present, but between that 2016 and 2019 date, we saw market improvement. We saw, certainly, we went from 2% failed roads to just 1%, 50% roads considered to be poor as far as Paisley rating goes to only 35%. So we saw decreases in those areas and increases. We saw a doubling in the number of roads that we characterize as excellent under the Paisley rating model, and we went from 26% good roads all the way up to 33%. So we're making headway with the investments that have already been made. But the question is it really enough? And the conservative estimate of what it will take to bring all roads up to either a good or an excellent condition, while we have been able to make strides towards this goal, this overarching goal, the total estimated cost is $60 million. And I know that Jim Rollins here and Bart Clark have both said many times to me and also over the course of several presentations and conversations with members of the Board of Selectmen, they've been able to tackle the low-hanging fruit that's around. There have been some easier, smaller projects where they could bring something from an absolutely horrid condition all the way up to that good or excellent condition with the funds that they have available. That isn't necessarily going to be an option with every project, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that this evening too. So the question that was really posed at the last meeting was, do we speed up the pace? And I want to reemphasize this with a comparison. And this is using Hullabird Avenue, the Case Avenue Bridge, and Oakdale Avenue projects as examples. So in the past 5 years, with the current approach, the town has invested an annual average of $716,000 in roadway improvements. Again, that's on an annual basis. So altogether, these 3 projects on Hullabird Ave, the Case Avenue Bridge, and the Oakdale Avenue projects, if we were to tackle those right now, we estimate it would cost about $2.7 million. It would take 3.8 years just to tackle these 3 roadway projects alone, and that's without any money going towards any other items going towards our crack and chip sealing, towards other forms of road repair and maintenance. Now, if you want to talk about something that is a little bit faster, if we were able to borrow the total cost of these projects, These repairs could have been made in a single year, for example, and could be made in a single year. So here we are, and you know, the question really is what kind of investment is needed. And if Bruce and Anne Marie, you'd like to say a few words about the differences that we've presented here, I think that would be great.
So there are advantages to both ways of approaching roadway repair. Obviously, if you pay as you go, you can do this in a very slowly. Not necessarily that that's an advantage, but it doesn't have a big impact on the annual budget towards the projects. However, if you borrow to get the funds available so that you can do one large investment on perhaps these 3 projects, then you can do the large projects in a shorter period of time. Borrowing also provides the advantage of providing a multi-year funding commitment where when you pay as you go, whenever you go to do the new budget year, the new annual budget, some things could be eliminated just because of the pressures from other areas in the budget, other department spending. Now, borrowing will usually involve debt for a 10 to 20-year payback period. Obviously, that doesn't apply when you're paying as you go, but it does provide the opportunity to tackle the large projects in a short period of time, whereas the pay-as-you-go method does not allow you to do that. And so those are the 2 basic options. And do you have anything else to add?
No, I think just the only thing I'd like to highlight is, you can see from the top of the slide, is to bring all the roads from a good to an excellent rating. It will take over 83 years to complete the improvements. That's assuming that we have only town money, that state grants are not part of the equation, because as everyone knows, the state budget is always up in the air, and at any point in time, the state could decide, as they did back in, I believe, 2018, to turn around and cut the funding to the towns and leave you with a huge hole in your budget. So I think 83 years is very telling in terms of the amount of time that it would take. And as you do these projects, keep in mind that all the remainder of your roads that are not being worked on are going to continue to deteriorate. So your infrastructure on an annual basis will continue to deteriorate as you try to, on the pay-as-you-go basis, bring them up to par. And again, like Bruce said, there are so many factors that go into your annual budget. That can always be a line item that the Board of Selectmen decides to cut and does not maintain at a level funding source.
So we are suggesting and recommending that the selectmen continue, or the town consider that a bonding project, that is borrowing money from the outside, from municipal bond investors to complete these large projects that you couldn't otherwise complete from a single year's budget allocation. Bonding is very similar to like a home mortgage. Very few people can buy a house outright with cash. It involves getting loan from the bank or another financial institution, and then paying that back with principal and interest over an extended period of time. For road projects, municipal bonding, bond terms are typically in the 20-year range, and lately the municipal bond market has had very attractive rates for these kinds of projects. They've been at historically low rates, and right now there is some upward pressure on rates, but if we act in a relatively short time frame, we could still take advantage, I think, of some historically low rates. And then, these large projects which have been identified, we can work towards achieving and completing those projects without the risk of interim budget decisions taking us away from the commitment to do those projects. And that's what a long-term borrowing scenario would provide the town. So we think, we're recommending that that the town very much consider a bonding solution towards this infrastructure investment. Now, you all, a reasonable question to ask is, does the town have the borrowing capacity for this kind of project? And that's a great question, and it's something you always have to consider. Municipalities in the state of Connecticut are governed by state law as to how much they can borrow at any one point in time. And in our annual report, we always disclose the statutory debt limits at the end of the fiscal year. And for fiscal 21, the statutory debt limit for general purpose projects is $54.5 million. We currently have some outstanding loans, $5 million on the Hinsdale renovation project, and $1.2 million on other general obligation loans, which leaves $48.3 million available for borrowing for general purpose debt. Whenever you issue general purpose debt, you have to budget for debt service, annual debt service, which covers the repayment of principal and interest over the borrowing term. So for 20 years of a borrowing plan, or a 20-year bond, those 20 years of general fund budgets must include a debt service appropriation sufficient to cover the repayment of principal and interest for that particular year. Now, for example, if the town were to borrow $10 million over 20 years at 4.5% annual interest, that would require, on average, an annual debt service of approximately $736,000. Similarly, an $18 million general obligation bond over 20 years at 4.5% requires an annual debt service of $1.325 million. So those are amounts that would have to be included in the annual general fund budget for debt service for a borrowing or a bond related to infrastructure improvements.
You can start it if you want, either way.
Sure. So we're going to transition a little bit here. You've heard now a little bit about what conversation we had at our last meeting. You've heard a little bit about the financing behind what it would take to really move some of these larger projects forward. And now we would like to present to the Board of Selectmen a list of roads that could be completed in a reasonably sized project. Sorry, were we muted before? My apologies if we were muted before. So, I'll start again. Yeah, I think that we were. So just in case anybody couldn't hear me, I'll quickly recap. You've heard a little bit about where we were with our last presentation, and now you've heard a little bit about what it would take to finance a reasonably sized borrowing. So now we would like to present to you information about what kinds of projects could be included in this sized borrowing. So we have a number of different items that have been developed here that we have all taken into consideration as we've determined what projects are a priority and what projects aren't a priority. Because as you heard before, we have at least, at a minimum, $60 million worth of road work that could be done today. But the bottom line is we don't necessarily have the resources to handle, all of that at once logistically, and financially, it would be too large an ask to go for all $60 million at once. So breaking this up into smaller chunks, we need to have an understanding of what roadways meet our definition of a priority for this possibility. So first and foremost, the comprehensive condition of the roadway and its features. That includes sidewalk, that includes the surface of the road itself, utilities underneath it, the drainage that accompanies it, and how all of these different factors play into the sustainability of that roadway too. For example, if you don't have good drainage, that roadway could deteriorate a lot faster than a roadway whose surface is cracked but has decent drainage. These are all synergies that we've been thinking about. I shouldn't say we, I should mean the experts on this, have really been considering as they've put a lens on what makes a project a priority. Some other ones for you. The safety conditions of the roadway have been accounted for in this list. Grant availability to help cover costs. I'll let, again, the experts speak a little bit more to that as we go along. The total expense of the project, that's something that we've already touched on in this presentation. There are some projects that are simply too large to take a bite out of in a single year's budget. We require some of these projects, if we want to have them completed in one go, they perhaps need to be a priority and need to be a part of a bond as opposed to part of your annual pay-as-you-go costs. Geographic diversity across different parts of town. We recognize that there are certainly more needs in certain pockets of town, but there's also a need to make sure that all of our residents are served, not just those in a select pocket, any given place. Connectivity to essential facilities, that includes emergency shelters, schools, and the like. Traffic volume that passes over the roadway has been taken into account. Certainly there are a lot of roads that are in poor shape, but if there are a few cars going over them, that represents a different level of need than a road that has thousands of cars going over it every day. Synergies with other work, as we've described here, such as utility work, and project readiness. You know, how close are we right now with the legwork that's already been done by the great folks at Public Works and the consulting engineers that we have, to make sure that the project is designed, ready to go out to bid, and of course, ready to be put into place. So that's just a short snapshot of really the very large process and the very time-consuming process that we put to this in determining which roads should be considered a priority in this case.
So as Josh pointed out, we looked at projects with kind of sort of a hierarchy, but the driving force was road condition. We know we have to do maintenance on the excellent roads, the good roads, and the okay roads. So we really focused our attention on the roads that are in really big trouble. So that's why, and all the other criteria were sub-criteria. If we had a really bad road and a new water line was being put in, we had cost sharing from the water company, or the gas company, or the sewer company, which is gonna offset, a majority of the costs. And then the town would only be responsible for the drainage and then, a small part of the paving. So we're able to leverage our money hard. So those are the two main driving forces that I see as far as timing and choice and affordability and need. With that said, we did try to we didn't want to spend all the money, say, right in the middle of downtown. That would sure be nice for downtown, but it didn't really serve the needs or some of the complaints that we've been getting over the years for different areas around town, or some of the safety concerns. So we broke it up into 5 major areas, kind of West Winstead, the Main Street area, East Winstead, the Winchester Center area, and then Highland Lake. So on the list you see some of these roads. All of them are in rough shape. Some of the roads we've already begun begun work on. Hubbard Street has a full set of engineering plans. Marshall Street, most of the drainage has been done. Case Avenue and Case Avenue Bridge, Elm Street, they all have engineering in, somewhere near the, 75% completion mark. Halliburtt Avenue is being leveraged with a water line project and and lot zip money. Oakdale Avenue has a serious drainage problem where we get sinkholes, as did Halliburtt Avenue. So that's where the safety aspect, comes in. Whiting Street, we're leveraging a grant, and Winchester Center, we have a bridge that is in need of repair up there. Newfield Road and South Road, we get complaints on a very regular basis, and we've done temporary repair after temporary repair, and it's reached a point in time where, we've either got to squander our time doing that or really invest in that road. Highland Lake, Lake Street is problematic. We're also leveraging that with a gas line project. Taylor Brook Bridge, that's another bridge that was rated in very poor condition and had to be fixed. We get a 49% grant from the state on that. And then West Wakefield Boulevard, we're working on a drainage project which will in turn improve the pavement. So that was just kind of a quick snapshot of the highlights of why these areas and these projects were put on the list. The list is certainly more in-depth than that, but that's kind of to give you a basic idea of how we came up with this list that you're seeing tonight.
Yep. And Bart, I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to add at this time. I want to make sure we can't necessarily see you on our screen, so I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to chime in with any additional info you might have. But I will say, for anybody who's watching, please just make sure that as you read this list of proposed road projects, you keep in mind, just like Jim said, we had the driving force of a comprehensive condition of the roadway, but all of these other items really played a role in deciding this list. And I hope that everybody will see the need that drives these projects to be available, or to be a part of the project, I should say. So we not only have this list of projects listed by area of town, we also have a proposed outlook of when these projects could be completed. And this is bearing in mind that, or this is in the mindset of trying to complete this in a 5-year window. That's a goal, not necessarily a guarantee, and that of course is dependent on supply chain and a number of other things that we've all been experiencing in great depth this year. But that is the goal, to, if we were to move forward with this, have these projects completed within 5 years. And there is a map here that you'll see. And Bart, I don't know if you want to just speak to what folks are seeing on the screen a little bit.
Eversource Gas has projects that are shown in blue where they will be doing significant milling and paving on those roads also. So that's leveraging some of the work that the Public Works would want to do with the bonded projects. Other than that, it's a pretty simple diagram. Of course, any questions, happy to answer.
Absolutely. And all in all, for the items here that are proposed to be included in the bond, that represents 9.47 miles to be treated. And I believe that represents just a little over 12% of the roads that we have here in town that are paved.
Yep.
Okay. So a few other things to take into consideration, and I am going to turn this over to Jim and Bart to speak about a little bit more. But this, we want to impress upon everybody, the need for this extra work is above and beyond the amount of money that we're currently putting into the road work. We really want to stress to everybody who's watching and to the Board of Selectmen that in order to make this as successful a project as possible, we need to both invest additional dollars into road work and repair in the manner that we just described, and we need to maintain our current level of road maintenance with that average of $716,000 per year. And this is an example of the road work that's already being proposed for the upcoming year, which would be handled out of the maintenance budget. But I'll let you speak to it a little bit more.
Sure, so the list you see in front of you, out of that $716,000 average that we put into, pay-as-you-go maintenance, or road work, we do a lot of different things. But probably the best bang for your buck is when you do a crack seal, which is those kind of black little snaky things that get painted on the roads to stop the water from infiltrating into the cracks. And then the chip seal, which is the asphalt layer covered with little tiny stones, which seals the rest of the pavement and adds a little bit of a wear surface by the stone. Surprisingly enough, the reason that asphalt fails is because the oils in the asphalt evaporate into the air over time. So the chip seal is intended to keep those oils in the asphalt and keep the asphalt flexible so that it can move under the wheels and tires of trucks and cars and so forth, frost heaves. As soon as that dries out, it becomes brittle and cracks, and the deterioration is pretty quick. So we have to do this. This is one of the reasons that our road infrastructure has deteriorated to the point that it's at. Is this aspect of just routine and preventive maintenance was ignored for over a decade. So the roads didn't stand a chance. Even if it was the best workmanship, the asphalt just deteriorated and couldn't do its job anymore. So this work is absolutely essential, and its cost per mile is so cheap for what you get. If you can keep a road with crack seal and chip seal in a decent condition, it'll pretty much stay that way for twice as long as it would without, and that prolongs your expensive treatments like we are proposing for all these roads that are on the list. So this kind of work, along with some basic drainage work and tree work, has eaten up most of that $716,000 a year. So it's just because this isn't bonded, it needs to continue. We're gonna lose ground on all the work that we've done over the last 7 years that I've been here.
So just another quick comparison for everybody out there who's watching along. So just as an example, if the town chose to stay the current course, not increase investment in roadways, and they decided that they wanted to invest in these projects that we've laid out, it would take approximately 21 years to complete the priority road work. And that's without any other maintenance work being done. So like Jim said, that would mean decades of neglect on the roads that are already in excellent and good condition. That would mean that those roads are going to deteriorate greatly in that time. And again, that's only the items that are on that list. Our goal would be to complete this work that we've outlined in 5 years through bonding and keep up with all of the preventative maintenance, as Jim just described. Now there are, additionally, while we're moving into the realm of possibly borrowing some money, there are some other large capital projects that the town has been considering taking on and that need to be taken on. And the time to really move forward with some of these larger projects is when we already have a possible bonding in this case, or a possible borrowing, just to use more common terminology, ready to roll. And there are 3 different projects that we would like to bring to the Selectmen's attention today for consideration that aren't truly road projects, but do relate in many ways. So the first of those is to cover essential sidewalks. And as you can see here, this is over on the right-hand side. This is a picture I took actually just a little over a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now, which is of Main Street here in Winchester. We have a number of really essential sidewalks that are in disrepair. These are sidewalks that connect us to our core commercial sector. These are sidewalks that connect us to emergency shelters, to warming and cooling shelters when there's extreme weather, to our schools, to the places where we work and where we eat. And while town laws, currently require the abutting property owners to repair the sidewalks, it's really in the town's long-term interest to carefully select sidewalks that it deems to be essential, invest in their repair. The time to consider these repairs is really now. My understanding, and Bruce, certainly you can jump in and speak a little bit more about this if you'd like. But my understanding is that it costs somewhere between $100 and $150 per linear foot to really address the sidewalk that's in need of crucial repairs.
Yeah, so we thought that if we could allocate $600,000 to these priority sidewalks, then that would allow us to repair approximately 4,000 linear feet. I wouldn't replace every sidewalk from beginning to end, but it would address those sections of the sidewalk that are hazardous or that are failing, and that would allow us to provide a pretty good network along Main Street and up to the 2 schools, and even over to North Main Street. And so there would be pretty much a fairly good loop or 2 for walking and for recreation and for essential travel for pedestrians from the downtown area up to the schools and out to the college and such. So 4,000 linear feet would be able to be repaired with $600,000.
And so thank you for that, Bruce. So the second project we'd like to bring to your attention is drainage around Highland Lake. And much like the last picture that I showed all of you, the picture on the right here is one that I took actually the same day as I was trying to come up with pictures for this presentation. And it was so very easy to find great examples of both of the issues that I've been demonstrating to you. So this is the drainage around Highland Lake. Undoubtedly, the town has a drainage system around the lake, and as you drive along, you can see this clearly, maybe not with snow on top, but there's a reason that there's still a lot of snow and a lot of liquid along the roadways right now. We need to have a better way to get water off of these roads and in a way that's going to protect our natural resource, and that's really the critical thing. Is not in a way that's going to wash sand and salt right into our lake, our beautiful lake, not in a way that's going to put other harmful chemicals into that body of water, but in a way that's really going to preserve this in perpetuity for the town's continued growth and development and future. So we estimate it's probably, all in all, between research and implementation, going to cost more than $1 million to make sure that we have a robust drainage system around the lake and within the lake's watershed. But we believe that $1 million right now is critical to move this project forward and to ensure that we are continuing to better the water that's entering this body as we go forward. And item number 3, this is a $1.4 million expenditure, and it is for a ladder truck. The bottom line is that Winstead has a number of stories that are 3+ stories tall, or a number of buildings, I should say, that are 3+ stories tall. And we have a need to access height as we go to these buildings, as we go to calls of these buildings. And a fire truck is never something that you want to use, but it is something that, of course, we need to have in order to keep our residents safe, in order to keep property safe, in order to keep and maintain the beautiful town and city that we have. So the ladder truck at this point in time has really outlived its useful life. It's operating on borrowed time. And we recommend that if the town's going to purchase one, given the sticker price for a vehicle of this size and magnitude, that it be purchased through a borrowing process, just like the one that we're describing today. So when you look at all of these different projects, and before you were seeing a slide that showed 5 different areas where we were going to be investing in these roadways. And so now you see these 5 sections plus an additional sixth section that outlines non-road projects, the 3 that I just described to you. That equals about $18.2 million in these project costs. It's a considerable number, but as we saw in previous slides, there's so much road work to be done. There's so much work that the town needs to do. Now is a historic time to borrow this money, to make sure that we're borrowing as cheaply as possible and as effective a way as possible. And now's the time to invest in our future too, to make sure that we are providing for the infrastructure that we want to see tomorrow, and to make sure that we are providing for a town that has the infrastructure to continue to build itself, to continue to see new businesses move into our main street, to continue to have families that want to move here, live here, spend their lives here, raise kids here. Now, the impact of the improvements, there are a lot of different ways to look at what would all of these impacts, or what would all of these improvements do to our town. And certainly I'll let Jim and Bart speak a little bit about the improvements that might be seen within the PASER ratings.
So yeah, as you know, this whole project has been driven by road condition. You earlier saw 2 different pie charts showing the improvement we made over 3 years from 2016 to 2019. This is what we expect the pie chart to look like in 5 years once we've completed these projects for this chunk of money. It would be nice if we had all 3 of these charts together to compare, but essentially the big news is that all the roads would be fair, good, or excellent, except for 25%. So we have 75% all fair, good, or excellent, only 25% that were less than that. Drastic turnaround. Again, there's always more to go, but this is getting, I think, a lot of bang for the buck. Bart, if you want to add anything above and beyond that, please feel free.
Regular maintenance continue while we do these things, because if all of our fair roads end up being poor by the end of the bonding, all the bonded projects are done, then we really wouldn't have gained as much as we had hoped. So regular maintenance is critical to making this all work.
Excellent, thank you.
But certainly there are other ways to measure the impact of improvements too. We can talk, the PASER ratings alone don't necessarily reflect the fact that our town roads would become safer and easier to traverse. Perhaps they do represent the fact that they'd be easier to traverse, but safer certainly. Residents and businesses are going to be more attracted to the town thanks to an improved image. We're working towards a long-term goal of minimizing needed annual road maintenance costs. Right now, in order to keep things the way that they are, we need a certain amount of money, and if all the roads were in pristine condition, we wouldn't need the same amount of annual road maintenance. We're talking about improving property values all around town, and the non-road projects provide pedestrian safety, cleaner water in Highland Lake, and improved fire safety.
I'm going to jump in and add one more thing to this. I had actually edited it into the program, but it must not have made the final cut. This weekend, or the last couple of days, is the perfect example of what I'm going to highlight. If you have a flatter, smoother road, you can plow it more quickly and use a lot less sand and salt. So especially around the water bodies, Crystal Lake, Highland Lake, Rugbrook, any road for that matter, because all that water does end up in a water course somewhere. But you'll save money because you'll be able to plow them a little more quickly. You'll scrape the snow off instead of having to melt it off, which means we're buying, chemicals and putting that into the environment. So there's a lot of benefits, that people might not notice all due to improving the road surface.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about timeline. You know, the total infrastructure investment costs, actually, I'm sorry, I started to jump into this, and I'm happy to talk about it, but
You're welcome.
I'm realizing that we have the finance, of course, our finance experts over here who can talk much better about it, so I'm gonna turn it over to them.
So, as Josh has highlighted and Jim have highlighted, obviously these projects can't all be done over a one-year period of time. The projects are going to continue over a period of the next probably 5 to 6 years. The goal being 5 years, but seeing, you know, contingencies can happen. The goal is to get these done. So how do you structure your borrowings? You typically will not borrow the full amount. So for example, if you were to go out for an $18 million bond, $15 million of that on roads. You are not going to go out and borrow $15 million at the get-go, because you're not going to spend $15 million. You're going to spend in specific tranches as the projects progress. So if you chose over a period of every 2 years, you draw down the money that you need on an as-needed basis. So you would go out to the bond market, not all at one time, but you would issue this debt in varying time periods. So you take on, say, for example, a $5 million debt as you begin the project, or a year or so into the project as you go to bond that. You start your repayment on that sooner than you would start, obviously, the last $5 million, say 5 years down the road. So you are taking your debt and expanding that out by not having it all up front, but you are matching your debt service with the actual project, and you're not paying for things prior to the actual work being completed.
So thank you so much for that much more eloquent summation than I would have given. But I'll talk a little bit more about next steps and a communication plan, because the bottom line is that the town hasn't seen this kind of investment in its infrastructure in decades at this point. We want to make sure that people have an understanding of what this entails. We want to make sure that everybody is aware of the plan and what it would take to move it forward, what kinds of steps we need to go through in order to consider and then authorize such a plan to proceed. First and foremost, if the town does decide that it wants to pursue bonding for large projects, it needs to do the following before April 18th. It needs to hold a public hearing on the proposed plan and take feedback from the public. We're going to launch a website loaded with information about the proposed road and non-road projects outlined in this presentation. That's going to include some detail sheets about each individual project that gets really in-depth, a frequently asked questions page, and much more. We want to hold multiple information sessions about this proposed plan in various facilities around town. We want to make sure that regardless of accessibility, regardless of time availability, we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to hear this. So we'll hold these sessions in a variety of different manners, in a variety of different locations. And we also plan, so long as the board wishes to proceed with this, to send an informational mailer to all Winchester and Winstead residents to describe this proposed plan in more detail, to make sure that internet isn't a factor, make sure we're capturing really the attention of anybody and everybody who has a stake in this, which is all of our residents. So after April 18th, a town meeting and referendum would have to be held to support this plan and move it forward. Now for public meetings, these are all very tentative, but I want to make sure that all of you are aware that we have done our homework. We have a list of proposed locations and times and days when we would be able to meet to discuss this matter in more depth. So first and foremost, we would propose the 5th Monday of the month, yes, the 5th Monday of the month is Monday, January 31st. We would propose that we hold a separate public hearing here at Town Hall or virtually if need be, to discuss this matter in more depth, to invite the public to have more conversations about it, about the plan that we've proposed here today, or a plan that has some small amendments from the Board of Selectmen. on Thursday, February 3rd, we have contacted the Winchester Center Congregational Church, which is ADA accessible, and we do have the opportunity to make use of that space for a separate, smaller public meeting. The Little Red Barn Brewery is open to these types of meetings, and we do have a penciled-in date, although I was informed today that we may have a scheduling conflict with Water and Sewer Commission, so we're going to check on that one, hence the asterisk, and see if that day really works. On Thursday, February 10th, we have an opportunity to make use of the Senior Center, and then really any time, but of course, we want to make sure that we have a virtual Zoom meeting so that folks who can't attend in person, aren't comfortable attending in person, still have an opportunity to do that, or maybe even just don't have time to attend in person. So that will really cover our bases, make sure we're touching base with people all around town, and touching base with them in a variety of mediums. And you know, we do have some information in our appendix. I'm happy to go through more detailed information or answer questions that the Board of Selectmen might have. But at this time, that concludes our presentation. You've now heard from us about why this was developed, about what it would take to fund a larger investment in our roadway and non-roadway infrastructure, and lastly, a proposed plan, and really what a road infrastructure investment would look like at this time. So I hope that you find it to be comprehensive, and well, we'll take questions now. All right, I see a few hands up. I did see Jack's first.
Josh, on slide 24, can you just explain a couple differences of the time period? I think I understand it, but I'd like just a clarification. The first bullet point says the town needs to decide by April 18th. The last bullet point says after April 18th, a town meeting and referendum would have to be held. If we're looking at the town needs to decide by April 18th, do we not therefore need a town meeting and a referendum to be held by April 18th?
No, we would not need a town meeting and a referendum to be held by that date. Now,
You have to, the selectmen need to move this to a town meeting.
right.
And then a referendum.
You're muted.
That's right. So the Board of Selectmen would need to schedule those items, the town meeting and the referendum, and that process needs to begin by April 18th. So we need to have a commitment from the Board of Selectmen as to whether they would like to proceed with these motions moving forward by that date, but we do not need to have the town meeting and referendum completed at that time.
So what you mean by the first bullet point, that the Board of Selectmen needs to make that approval?
That's right, and I apologize for any confusion. Other questions, and I apologize, folks. It is difficult to see everybody at once, but I see Candace. Candace has her hand up.
Could you clarify the $600,000 for the sidewalk improvements? Have that also outlined in the Communities Challenge Grant, which we don't know that we'll get that. Would this be, if we were to get the Communities Challenge Grant, would the $600,000 be removed from the potential bond?
That would really be a matter for the Board of Selectmen to decide. At this time, we have more than $1.6 million worth of sidewalk work to be done in town. It would be my professional recommendation that the $600,000 still be bonded for, to make sure that we have an opportunity to really address as much work as possible. But that being said, if it is an item, if it's approved by the Communities Challenge Grants Review Committee and the board saw fit to remove it, we would still be able to have a lot of work done, and that's a positive thing.
I see, so it's not a backup, the community,
It's supplemental.
That's what I wanted to clarify, thank you.
No problem.
Josh,
Oh, yes.
so I think the Community Challenge Grant was focusing on the sidewalks in downtown,
Yep.
but not necessarily linking the ones up to the schools.
Got
And
it.
that's what the 600,000 would bring in the school sidewalks into the downtown sidewalk improvement.
Right. I don't know if everybody could hear that, but the sidewalk project that we proposed in the Communities Challenge Grant, it really focuses on a different part of the sidewalk improvements than are proposed through this bond. That doesn't mean that there couldn't be a change if we had a discussion with the state, if we decided, if we were awarded that, but we decided not to go with the bond. But we are hopeful that we will be able to address more sidewalks rather than fewer.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions that we can answer for the board at this time? Candy, I haven't seen your hand up before now.
I don't really have a question as much as operational movement of this thing. So that if we all agree that we should move to the next step to the little meetings that you proposed, we don't have to make a decision about the bonding quite just yet, but we could start to hear from townspeople, correct?
That's right. And that's really what we'd encourage. We want to make sure that we are hearing from members of the public. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity to hear from members of the public and be able to make reasonable changes to this program, this proposal, if you see fit. And the only way to do that is to engage in that way. And Jack, I saw your hand.
And this goes more to Jim. Your crew does a massive amount of work every year to repair the roads, fix them. And you've mentioned the amount of money that would be needed just on a regular basis. On the work that we're proposing here over the next 5 years, maybe 6 years, on this bonding issue, can you kind of estimate about how much of that work, what percentage of that work would have to be given out to private contractors?
Yeah, so I would estimate as close to 100% as possible. What our role is to do whatever preparation work we have to do, whether that's the design and engineering, scheduling, or, you know, if the drainage from one of these bigger projects runs into another piece of drainage on it that's kind of unrelated, we may have to update that other one on our time. But all these big capital projects are really, my crew's interaction is really just going to be supportive and only as needed.
Thank you, Jim.
And to further that point, that's just going to make sure that their crew is open to tend to the preventative maintenance that really needs to be done on the roads all the more. Are there any other questions that we can answer at this time? Seeing none, you know, what I would propose we do, we did lay out a line of actions that we would like to take to make sure that the public understands this project and has as much of an opportunity to weigh in as possible. If the mayor would look favorably on it, we would recommend that the next meeting be set for 2 weeks from tonight at 7 o'clock here at Town Hall if possible, virtual if not, to discuss this further.
2 weeks from tonight or 2 weeks from last night?
Oh, I apologize, 2 weeks from last night.
Hey, I'm okay with that. Is everyone else okay with that?
Yes, definitely, special meeting.
All right, this is the town's chance to talk about the infrastructure plan. So, January 31st at 7 p.m. Do we need a motion for that? Or just set the special meeting? All right. It'll be a special meeting, January 31st. Moving on, anyone else?
I think you might want to think and just give us the consensus to Josh and Jim and staff to continue with the meetings as he outlined in the Winchester Center, at the barn, senior center, etc., through the month of February.
I'm in agreement with moving forward with the communication plan as outlined by Josh.
Ditto on that, absolutely.
Okay. Good to go on that, Josh?
Very good. Thank you all. And thank you for your time and listening.
Thank you for putting this all together. It was a great job.
Yeah, nice report, all of you.
Okay, moving on to new business. Item 22-03, refunds recommended by the Collector of Revenue.
Bruce, do you want to take that one, or Anne Marie?
Yeah, I can do that. So this, the tax collector has, is recommending 3 refunds totaling $281. 272 relate to certificates of correction on motor vehicles, and $9 relates to an overpayment on a real estate tax bill. So
Or do you have heavy lifting?
I know, but still.
any questions? Yes, Todd?
We've, unless you really want to.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
I guess so. Not sure how long the discussion has been.
They are doing the, let's do this.
All right.
Item 22-04. Consider possible action on adopting the attached resolution for CPACE agreement. Josh?
So this is a little bit off the beaten path, folks. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the CPACE program, but I want to bring it all to your attention and tell you a little bit about it. So this is the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. It's offered by the Connecticut Green Bank, and you know, the 5-cent version is the Connecticut Green Bank offers commercial property owners and industrial property owners as well a level of financing for different green energy projects. So that's not just limited to solar panels on a roof. That's a total rework of an HVAC system to make sure it's as energy efficient as possible. That's a rework of pretty much any capital item where environmental efficiencies can be found. So the only way, however, that CPACE offers financing to its different commercial and industrial customers is if the municipality adopts a resolution and signs an agreement that allows it to participate in this program. And the reason that this is, there is a component of the financing program that requires our tax collections time and energy. Our tax collector has reviewed this program at this time and has agreed that it would be easy to adopt and implement the program. The Connecticut Green Bank does offer a level of one-on-one assistance with municipal tax collector's office to make sure that everything that's needed is introduced seamlessly, flawlessly. I will say from personal experience, I did oversee the implementation of the CPACE program when I was in Bolton. It took less than 2 hours for the Bolton tax collector to have a phone conversation with representatives from the Connecticut Green Bank and have everything up and running on our system in Bolton to make sure that this financing opportunity was available. But the voluntary benefit assessment payment programs do require that tax collector time. And therefore, we need to adopt a resolution. They require us to adopt a resolution and require us to sign an agreement in order to have any of the commercial or industrial properties in town be able to take advantage of this financing opportunity. So Joe Miller, who you're all familiar with, at least by name, who's the new owner of 35 Willow Street in Winchester, has expressed interest in participating in this program if the town will allow it. And as I've said, in order to allow for it, we have to take some action steps. The town attorney has reviewed both of these documents. They're very standard boilerplate documents at this point in time. In fact, 140 out of the 169 municipalities across the state have entered into this program already. The program's been around and active since 2012. Just a few around us that are involved in the program include Barkhamsted, New Hartford, Torrington, Norfolk, Litchfield, as well as others. So from my perspective, this is a very tried and true method to make sure that all of the different all the different facilities around in Winstead have an opportunity to access this type of financing. I think that it's a really good, positive program. And I hope that I've outlined enough information here for you to be able to make a decision tonight. In the event that the Board of Selectmen, however, would like to take a little bit more time with it, of course, I would understand. But I'll take any questions that you might have. Yes, Linda.
Yeah, how are other businesses going to get information about this? Joe Miller knows about it, but how about other businesses? How are you going to reach out to them?
Certainly, I've been, and for those of you who may have incidentally also received these emails or have heard from some of these business owners, about once a month I've been sending out an update to all of the business owners that we have email addresses for in town. And I've been giving them regular updates, you know, everything from how to sign up for a CT Visit tourism page on the state's website, all the way up through letting them know about the press conference that we held last Friday. So I would certainly take advantage of that opportunity to make sure that folks are aware that we've entered into this. To do that before the town agrees to it, I think would be premature. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up in the event that the town decides not to partake in it. But I would also... Oh, I'm sorry. I would also just want to make sure that information's posted on social media, perhaps include information about it in the next Winchester Wire edition that goes out.
So this is really the first step. It's like the town is going to apply for this. And once we apply for it, anyone can apply for these loans?
Well, so the town is not a part of the loan application process. Once we approve an agreement with the Connecticut Green Bank, the individual, whether it's commercial or industrial property owner, would apply to the Connecticut Green Bank for a loan, and then they would work out all of the details. The funding mechanism that the municipality is involved in, and the reason that we have to approve our association with this program, is because voluntary benefit assessments are used as a means to collect funding or some of these loan dollars. So the municipality helps with the collection of some of these funds once they've been loaned out. Candace, yes.
So that also would be listed under economic development, since they're the key drivers for our industrial parks and commercial groups, I would assume. Once we redesign the website, that would be an area would be covered under economic development.
Absolutely. I think that this is a nice economic development driver. It helps keeps all of the, it will help keep all of the various businesses and facilities that we have in town thinking in an ecological way, help them stay active, stay sustainable, lower their costs, and ultimately really invest in those facilities, which is what we're encouraging through our facade improvement program. This is just a new way to help them find funding for those programs, for those projects, I should say. Jack.
Josh, participation in this program is by the town, that's fine. And anybody, any commercial or industrial owner currently here and considering coming here may apply for an application for funding, correct?
That's right. Nearly any type of commercial property, industrial, retail, etc.
All right. So the follow-up question to that is that these are competitive grant monies that are available, so that if I apply now, I'm not necessarily asking for $20,000 or $10,000 to improve some efficiencies. I may get it, I may not. It's a competitive program.
I will say nothing's guaranteed, but this is not a competitive grant program. The Connecticut Green Bank operates truly in this manner as a bank. They're looking to make key investments that are going to help promote sustainability. That's really their mission. But they do have a lot of money at their disposal where they can make some of these key offerings in terms of loans to make sure that folks have financing they need to make green investment.
Okay, and then follow-up then for us, just to reconfirm. So the reason that we're involved and the tax collector is involved is if these loans come through the Green Bank, the CPACE program, there could be a lien put on there before there's some kind of a interaction with their property ownership, the lien perhaps.
That's right.
Fair enough, that's my question. You answered it.
If there are no other questions, then I'll turn it over to all of you.
I think this partners well with our press conference from last week, in doing a lot of things that we can to help businesses in town, and I think this is just another opportunity for them. How does the rest of the board feel? Do we want to move it forward?
I'll make a motion, Todd, if you'd like. I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen adopt the resolution in supporting the joining of the CPACE program and authorize the town manager to sign and submit the CPACE agreement with the Connecticut Green Bank.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Lynn? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Moving on, new business item C, discussion on cannabis zoning regulations. Anyone want to start?
I'll start.
Candy?
Yeah, because I'm the one that asked to make sure it was on the agenda. And the reason being is just because of timelines. The Connecticut State Legislature passed this, regardless of how we individually feel about the subject. The state legislature did put timelines into the calendar regarding, towns and what towns can do in terms of zoning or accepting or rejecting retail outlets within our community, et cetera. So I think it's important, and the planning and zoning is starting to look at it because of those timelines. So the Board of Selectmen, I think, really needs to, decide what our organization will be around this. Are we gonna hold a public hearing on it? Will the Board of Selectmen make the decision of whether to have it in town or not? Will we send it to referendum, in May with everything else? I know that we can make the decision based on legislation, but some towns have run out to the public on that. We know that some people are going to want it, some people are not going to want it. I think it's important to remember that we have a facility 500 feet from our border. So I know that the 3% doesn't sound like a lot of money, and the 3% may get clawed back. But remember, it's only gonna be within 500 feet of our southern border, and only 25 to 30 minutes to our northern border. And if it goes into the plaza over where the movie theater is, again, within 500 feet of our border. So I think it's important that this board begin to have the conversation so that the law just doesn't happen, because they've already started with the license, the rolling licenses that they're gonna issue in the next 2 months, that we don't get in a position where all of a sudden timelines have passed and then here it is without us weighing in. So that was one.
What would be the best way to proceed to take action by the Board of Selectmen tonight? Or as you had suggested, we're under some kind of a timeline to get applications in. What do you think would be the best way to proceed at this point?
I think that as a board, we should hold a public hearing, maybe jointly with the planning and zoning, early in February on it, and let people come and discuss it. Josh could go through at that time with planning and zoning as well on the regulations. Fortunately, planning and zoning does have some regulations already around where marijuana facilities could be, and that was from the medical marijuana discussion that happened. I don't remember how many years ago that was. But there are some regulations in place. They see some things as tweaking it. If, for instance, the question would be, do you want it on Main Street? Do you not want it on Main Street? Do you want it in certain areas and And then it's also not just about the selling, it's about the growing. Like if you look at the old Route 8 corridor, down by the Still River, is that a good place for people to put in a warehouse and grow and create, other issues? And then there's the whole idea of not having it at all within the town. Some towns have rejected it as well. So if we start with, I would think, a public hearing and going over all the steps that have to happen in the next, I think, on July 1st, some other significant dates come up. That we get that in planning and zoning, and I guess investors too, because people want to invest in this. People want to put facilities in. Investors are out there, to signal what we as a town are going to do.
Would you accept the fact that maybe we could have this public hearing at the same time we have a board meeting, or would you prefer to have a separate public hearing?
Oh, I don't mind anything. I mean, that's up to everybody.
Well, let's go for February 7th for a public hearing. That would be our next standard meeting, the first Monday in February.
Josh, would you have time to put some stuff together for that?
Absolutely, happy to.
Yeah, I mean, just the timelines, like what the state is doing and how it's rolling out, and then we just have to, planning and zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would certainly have to make sure planning and zoning, some members, the chairman or somebody from planning and zoning is at that meeting, along with that public hearing.
So Todd, is that okay with you?
That is okay with me. So that would be February 7th at 7 p.m. Town Hall. Hopefully it'll be an in-person meeting.
Well, talk about it. If it's not an in-person meeting, we can certainly then, I don't know, Josh, if that's still going to be possible, to open it up during that public hearing to some Zoom participants.
Whenever we have a public hearing, it has to be open to on Zoom. Like when there is a public hearing or town meeting, it has to be on Zoom. If we're on Zoom, it has to be on Zoom.
I know it has to be on Zoom, but I want to be able to have people participate, to be, like, as I asked earlier tonight, they can't participate in this meeting on Zoom, but on a public hearing, I certainly would want that.
There are other ways that people can participate where they could submit something in advance and it could be read at the meeting. So there are multiple ways. Just like if you're going to the legislator, you can say, I would like to submit a document, and you could complete a form by a certain deadline, and that could be read at the meeting as well.
That's an excellent point. So when we advertise this public hearing, we should advertise that there should be a date which anybody has anything to submit.
Right.
At that date, yeah. Excellent point.
And that gives people about 3 weeks to get their any letters in to a selectman or to Josh, if they won't be able to attend the meeting, or just their input. If they can get that to a member of the board.
And it also should be of a certain length. Like if you're going to a legislative meeting, there's a certain, well, that's actually when you're talking about it. It should be 3 minutes, or I don't know how to, it can be a 20-page document, a research document. I don't know how we identify that, but it should be something that can be read in 3 minutes, I guess.
The other piece of it too will be is that while we're talking about it now on the live stream, there are 4 people watching. I'm not sure how many more are watching at home or will watch later. But Josh, I don't know if there's somebody, or Todd, if somebody wants to make a posting about it, that the town is, interested in your comments on the, recreational marijuana use, retail stores, et cetera, in town, and there will be holding this public hearing. So something that goes out over social media, maybe a little press release, because I don't know which newspapers are on right now, but just something that goes out a little bit and says that, because people won't pick up from this.
Also, planning and zoning could do the same as well. They should be communicating the joint meeting.
Right, so then,
February 7th.
first we have to ask them if they will hold the joint meeting.
Right, of course.
Right, so, so that can be done just by asking, the chairman on that, and then Josh, as long as you have time to put the organizational pieces of dates and times in it.
I'm just wondering if, this is gonna be a public hearing, do we want input from other, departments? Like, do we wanna hear from the social worker or someone from the police department? Or is this just about rules and regulations with planning and zoning? And do we wanna hear from Jay Case?
I think that everyone who's gonna have a stake in this, if they wanna talk, we should allow them to talk. Cause it'll
But
affect.
should they be speakers?
In their role or just as a citizen, anybody can.
In their role, Just a thought.
I think you might have speakers on the other side then too, in terms of, because kind of recreational also is somewhat, some people might be getting their medical marijuana from that same facility as things expand out and whatnot, so there might be some people on that side. I mean, I do believe that people are gonna be on all different sides of this. Our own personal preferences are gonna matter. Other people are not, there are gonna be a lot of, people in support and people not in support. And that's what's hard about this one, is, you do have both sides of it.
I think for, the 7th, it should probably be citizens and their opinions. To get the feel for the community and what their opinion or desired direction is. And then going from there, I think we can do the business and, department issues that may come up. So we'll table this till February 7th, public hearing. Okay, any further discussion on it? All right, moving on to citizens' comments. Board of Selectmen will recognize public speakers for 3 minutes or less. If you wish to speak, call in at 860-738-6958. 860-738-6958.
We need the Jeopardy music now. We need the Jeopardy music playing. We're flooding the lines, huh?
I don't think tonight. I have no calls coming in.
Yeah, all right, let's move on to Selectmen's comments and reports. Anyone have anything?
If there's nothing on this,
Candy?
take a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?